What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode this week. We got a lot to talk about. This is going to be a very basketball-loaded episode, I'd say, with the start of college basketball happening this week. NBA still going on as well. Some stuff going on in the MLB we need to talk about as well. Maybe some football, depending on the timing. Can't guarantee anything because I don't really care too much about it at the moment. This is your Sports Digest. I'm your host, Alex McNinch. And as I said, this is going to be a basketball kind of heavy episode. So let's just jump right into it. Let's stick with the big leagues first as we kind of transition into the couple of weeks into the season. We are starting to figure out a little bit about some of the teams. We are maybe now learning new things about certain teams. The biggest news, the Memphis Grizzlies finally win a basketball game. My happiness has been restored after that. Finally being able to take care of the Blazers on Sunday night, winning that one. So 1-6 on the season. As at the time of recording tonight, we play the Heat. So things could change, but a lot of stuff happening in that game specifically. We've had a couple of games. We played our first in-season tournament game. Got to talk about the in-season tournament a little bit as a whole. But for us, playing Portland 2 games in a row on Friday and Sunday, Friday's game was an overtime loss and a game we should have won. I'm not going to blame the refs for our poor execution down the stretch, but when it's 36 to like 14 in the free throw rate or free throw comparison in favor of Portland, it's hard to justify winning a game when that's the case. And when you look at the 2-minute report from the league itself and seeing that they missed 2 calls in which in that fourth quarter, might I add, Taylor Jenkins had to use both of his challenges, won both of them. And still, they got 2 calls wrong after that, including one when we were up 4 with 14 seconds. They missed an out-of-bounds call, which led to Portland getting the ball, end up hitting a 3 there and cutting the lead down, which ultimately changed the outcome of the game and pushed it to overtime. So I don't want to blame the refs because there was some poor execution, poor bench play, but it's hard to not think about those things. But on Sunday, a little bit more of a complete win, able to get some production off the bench, especially in Luke Kennard. I think the Grizzlies are really finding their starting 5, or they're at least closing 5. That is probably with Marcus, Desmond, Luke, Jaren, and newest member Bismack Biyombo. We'll talk about him in a second. But I think with getting the bench production that you did, it helps a lot. Kenneth Lofton Jr. came off the bench and had surprisingly solid minutes. He looked in the preseason, so got a little concerned there, but looked decent enough to play the part and got him some buckets, some good rebounds, hustle plays, good assists. Nothing to complain for on that front. And then Santi Aldama made his return from injury, which was a big thing for the Grizzlies, coming back off of a start where everyone is just out. Santi Aldama being your main guy to score off the bench coming back is a big one. He had like 5 points in 2 minutes, immediately coming on, a couple assists and rebounds. Santi just doing Santi things. It's another body that you have to go and guard, and that's the big thing because when you look at the Grizzlies' wings on the bench, you look at David Roddy, you look at Zaire Williams, and you think, okay, maybe I can just throw my body around over there, and, we don't have to really worry about them as much. But with Santi Aldama, we got to go guard this guy because he will shoot it even over you, so you have to contest him. But the big story about this all is the debut of Bismack Biyombo, and I was excited. I made a very smart comment on whenever we signed Bismack Biyombo because I was upset about losing a bunch of games, saying that, oh man, great, we signed Bismack Biyombo, woohoo. But really, if you had talked to me outside of that day, you would understand that I was very, very happy about this Bismack Biyombo signing. You're looking at a guy, sure, he's 6'8", a little undersized, in the height category, but still has a 7'7" wingspan. He was second in total rebound percentage per 36 minutes last year off the bench for the Phoenix Suns. Was second in offensive rebound rate behind Steven Adams for most of the year last year. Hard screen setting. I forgot what the exact stat is for that, but he was top 3 in that category last year. So the things that Steven Adams did for you, set the hard screens, offensive rebounds, keeping plays alive, just being a big body in the paint, to be able to keep Jaren from having to take a big load of the interior force or having to constantly get boxed out and take a body to his chest or hip or whatever. That's what Bismack does. And the big thing about Bismack is he knows his role. He's a veteran. He understands. He's been there and done that. He's gotten his big contract. He understands, hey, my role is to come out here, set screens, roll to the basket, be in the dunker's position, get rebounds, get blocks, and get out in transition. Like that's what I got to do. And he did all of that exceptionally well for this team, and you could see a noticeable difference for this group as well. And even now, what you had to do with Xavier Tillman being in the starting lineup, which Tillman is now day-to-day with the knee soreness, monitoring that. I think he should be okay, but they're just being precautious. You don't want to have any long-term knee injury because you see what happened with Steven if you end up kind of letting it go a little bit. You want to make sure that he is okay and not pushing anything too hard. Now with Biyombo and Lofton doing what he did off the bench, you could trust that for another game or two in that case scenario. But you look at beforehand when you're running Tillman out there, you got to run Zaire because you got to have another extra guy that can get out there and rebound with his length and size, right? Or length and size meaning his height rather than his muscular size. We all know Zaire Williams weighs 105 pounds, but the impact that Biyombo has is very similar to what Steven Adams was going to bring to the team. And in that case, you're able to bring out Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard had a terrible preseason. I think he would be the first to tell you that. Shooting 1 for 13 from 3. Had a slow start to the season, 0 for 5. Got a concussion in the first game. Missed a couple games. Now starting to find his rhythm a little bit. Is starting to look like. So that's exciting to see. And now if you run Bismack Biyombo out there in that lineup, you're able to get those backdoor pin-down screens that you weren't really getting before with Tillman because people aren't really dying on your screens like that. Jaren's not going to come set you screens too much because he's already doing something else, whether he's spot up in the corner, on the wing, or he's just down inside posting up. You're allowing him to move freely through the offense instead of being the main guy who's setting a screen always. Because Tillman, he sets a soft screen, and that's not a knock, but a soft screen is like a little bump and run screen. And you're not going to sit there and hold your ground while the guy works around you like Biyombo would, right? X is going to hit you a screen and immediately roll or pop, right, based on the play situation. But Biyombo was unbelievable. I'm super excited to see what else he can do. And there's just a little bit of hope. Sure, you're playing the worst team in the league in the Portland Trail Blazers, but just having that little bit of hope that you can see this guy can make a big impact for your team. And keep in mind, he was in foul trouble the entire time. That was big, and I'm excited to see kind of how this direction goes. I assume Luke Kennard's probably going to find his way back into the starting lineup, and if not, they still start Zaire Williams. I see Luke Kennard end up playing more minutes than him. It might just be a start-sit thing or Roddy start and kind of just figure it out there based on the team you play, the matchup you're wanting. You might roll with a certain guy. Like this next game against Miami, I wouldn't be surprised if Zaire is out there because you have Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero you have to guard. I assume they're going to trust – I wouldn't say trust, but they would rather put Zaire Williams on Tyler Hero due to his length and wingspan compared to Luke Kennard. But if we know when we play Utah on Utah, you'd still run Zaire out there, but still – in a different lineup, you might want to run Kennard or Roddy or whoever else. But so far, there's a little glimmer of hope to where I can kind of see some excitement through this roster and the lineup that they do. Obviously, the big thing, got to get healthy. Conchar out right now. Tillman out. They just said Derrick Rose is probably going to be out for the next week again with his knee soreness. We kind of all saw that coming. Unfortunately, he kind of get thrusted into a position that he didn't expect to get a lot of minutes early, kind of being that 10th man off the bench expected to be. Now he ended up being like the 6th man off the bench because everybody was hurt, forced to play more minutes. You can kind of tell in those in the couple of games, especially the Dallas game, that things just weren't right with him. So want to make sure, for sure, don't let him get hurt because that would be killing his morale. But he's interactive on the bench. Just mainly got to get everybody healthy. Got to get to the 25th game where we get Ja back, or 26th game rather, so you can get him back. Because once he comes back, if this is kind of how it's going, if we end up making a move at the deadline or after he comes back, whatever it is, you can start to see the pieces kind of get put together for this team. Speaking of the Grizzlies finally winning a game, the Celtics finally lost a game. They lost in overtime to the Timberwolves last night. Celtics have looked awesome. Obviously, the starting five of Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis has been unstoppable. They've been blowing teams out. They've been playing incredible. Their offense is fantastic, and they're turning defensive stops into offensive transition buckets, and that's when the best teams create their offense based off of their defense and vice versa. And it's incredible to watch them play. Derek White's been out a couple of games due to the birth of his child, so Al Horford's been thrusted into that lineup. They've run a little bit big, and the bench depth goes down a little bit. But overall, looking at this team, when we talked about them in the preseason and how their rotation would turn out, it's worked out perfectly for them. And they're one of the teams where if you see them on TV, if you are scrolling and you see Boston Celtics across like one of the channels that they're playing, you have to stop and watch because there's just something incredible about the way that they move the ball and they all space the floor together and just kind of know, even though they've only played, 7, 8 games with each other, it feels like they've been playing for 2 years now just because of the way you look at them on the court, how they're all understanding with their spots, and that's what it takes by getting good veterans on the team that are just winning players. So Boston looking fantastic early. But I also want to talk about, I know I just skipped over it, but we'll kind of come back to some of the other stuff. But the in-season tournament, it debuted this past Friday. As I mentioned, the Grizzlies played in Portland for one of them. Golden State and Oklahoma City played. Cleveland played at Indiana. Milwaukee and New York, Chicago and not New Jersey, Brooklyn. A bunch of games went on Friday, and they debuted the new courts and the new jerseys. If you have not seen them, you can go look at it. If you look for the Pacers, just know it looks like you're swimming in a swimming pool on their court. I can't wait to see the Pelicans play their game for a play-in tournament on their court because that thing is hideous. There's some courts that look cool, some courts that look really bad. The red courts are questionable. I feel like it's a little distracting, but I assume it'll grow on to me. But I kind of echo the same sentiment of Damian Lillard after they got their win and asking how he felt. He said, I still really don't know what's going on. And I feel the exact same way. I really don't know what's happening. Like, I understand there's different pools and there's different groups. And I know, sure, I'm the podcaster. I'm the NBA guy. I'm supposed to know what this means. That don't mean shit. I don't know what's going on. I think you got to play in a certain pool. The top 2 teams advance on into the next round to where the playoffs or the next round, the semifinals, whatever, the quarterfinal happens. And if you make it to the championship game, you play in Las Vegas, and it counts towards the 83rd game. So 2 teams will play 83 games compared to 82. I don't know what's going on. I really don't. I'm just enjoying the ride, I guess, of the NBA season and NBA basketball. But those games are every Tuesday and Friday. No games today due to the NBA implementing something a year or 2 ago about taking this day off due to the voting in each city or whatever it is. That's not my side to think about it. I just know it's the day that they take off for voting. So there weren't any games today, but this Friday we'll be playing in-season tournament, and then next Tuesday it'll be the same thing, continuing out through this month into the December time frame. So that's the in-season tournament. I really, again, don't know what the hell is going on with that, but I do know what the hell is going on in Los Angeles, because both of the teams in Los Angeles have very interesting paths to kind of look at. First, the Clippers. Trading for James Harden. They have now played a game with him, and obviously everybody wants to overreact, as they should. That's welcome to the NBA. What have you done for me lately? That's what it is in sports in general, let alone just the NBA. James Harden played fine in his debut with LA. It was more of a Paul George and Kawhi Leonard poor shooting night. Mason Plumlee also got hurt in that, so you lost your backup big man pretty much. You're going to have to run small now. With PJ Tucker being your 5 like it's 2019 Houston again, you were really limited on that end. But I didn't hate what I saw from them, honestly. I was only being able to watch it sparingly because college basketball was on my other screens, but I was able to catch bits and pieces of it a little bit. It looked fine. They lost to the Knicks. Everybody's going to overreact, like I said, but I think it's going to take a couple games to kind of figure it out. Like I said, a couple poor shooting performances as well from George and Leonard, so you can't really knock Harden for being terrible in that game. He looked fine, shot it efficiently, passed the rock around, did his thing. It'll only be time for LA. The only worry for me would be about that bench depth, kind of like Boston. But at the same time, when you're playing all of those guys and have the starting 5 that you do, you should never have to worry about being on the court without at least 2 or 3 of your starters on the court at all times anyways. So it'll be interesting to see now what they do, especially if Mason Plumlee is going to be out for an extended period of time, which it sounds like it is, because it's going to be an MCL sprain, I believe is what they were saying it is going to end up being. So only due time will tell with them. But considering that being a good side of Los Angeles, moving to the other side of Los Angeles, which is literally the same stadium. I don't know what I'm talking about, but talking about the purple and gold, everybody is aware that LeBron is starting to kind of dwell down just a little bit into his age. We're all seeing the minutes kind of go down, production go down a little bit, but LeBron's been, I'd say, very solid this year. Even above expectation-wise, I would believe, for LeBron. Anthony Davis doing the same thing. He's been able to stay on the court besides him having groin spasms. I don't think I've ever seen him would do that before. He also acted like he got shot during that as well. You'd have thought that he tore his groin off of his entire leg the way he acted. But we also, what happened in the playoffs against the Grizzlies last year, we thought his arm was dislocated into 17 different positions, but he was just fine and came out the second half, similar to what happened here. But the rest of the Lakers team, you re-sign pretty much everyone. You bring in a couple of new guys, and you look at the Austin Reeves. Sure, his production it's up and down. We all expected it, right? Austin Reeves getting that big contract. He had a great year last year, semi-decent year the year prior, kind of making his name known. But we all know it's going to happen. There's only a limit that you can get with him, right? This isn't an all-star player. This is a top-tier role player. Yeah, that makes sense. Top-tier role player is what Austin Reeves is. He is a third or fourth best player on a championship or playoff contending team, right? This is not a guy who's going to average 25-plus or 20-plus even and make an all-star game with 6 assists or 6 rebounds or even phenomenal defensively. Like, you're never going to get that out of the guy, but he is going to be an efficient guy for you. But this year, he's been up and down. Obviously, new contracts based on that as well. D'Angelo Russell, you bring him back. We all know D'Lo and his wishy-washy play at times. You really don't know what you're going to get out of him. And then the constant rotation of who's going to be playing at the 3 for you. Jared Vanderbilt's supposed to be that guy. He's out for an extended amount of time with injury. And now you got a rotation now of having to choose between Taurean Prince and Cam Reddish, both guys you signed in this offseason to be bench rotation players, now being thrusted into the starting lineup. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? They've been rotating both of those guys in and out. I think even one game they started Austin Reeves at the 3 and started Gabe Vincent at the 1 with D'Lo at the 2 and ran really small from the guard and wing position and just let LeBron and AD take care of it down low. But even like LeBron is a point guard at this point, right? He takes the ball up the court every single time, so that was never going to work. So you had to get a wing in there that was going to be able to spot up in the corner or come set an off ball and kind of let somebody go and do the whole rotation thing through plays. But you haven't really gotten something truly impressing from both of those guys. I mean, Taurean Prince had a couple games where he was good. The rest were eh. Same thing with Cam Reddish. He had a couple games where I was like, oh, man, this guy's going to really be an impact for this team. And then the next game, it's just you start him, and it's like I mean, I don't really care because I'm not a Lakers guy, but like to see the rotations that sometimes kind of go out there. Darvin Ham obviously gets criticized a lot, but also gets a lot of praise. I think he's okay. I don't think he's outstanding, but I don't think he's terrible. He also has a tough situation on his hands when you're getting these guys signed, and Rui Hachimura also being hurt doesn't help the rotations as well. You know, you really don't know what you're working with early. But again, as I'm being told as a Grizzly fans, injuries are just part of the game, so you got to figure it out, I guess. But not a great start for the Lakers too early on. I assume that they will figure it out. They have LeBron James on their team that is playing at an exceptionally well level right now. And then obviously Anthony Davis, if he stays healthy, they're perfectly fine. We all know eventually it's going to come back to both of those guys throughout the season. Hopefully that's not the case. We want to see everybody healthy and on the court, but it's just inevitable. Injuries are just a part of the game, especially with those two guys with their injury history. They're bound to miss a couple of games because of reasons. So it'll be interesting to see how they balance all that out as they did last year. You know, they were such a great second half team. Now let's see what that motivation is like from the offseason, getting swept by Denver and now having a rough start. See if they can use that as motivation to continue going as a group moving forward, just in general. So that's it for the Lakers. But another team that is in the Western Conference that is unbelievably hot to start off the season are the Dallas Mavericks. And we talked about last playoffs or I guess in the offseason time frame when talking about Dallas in general, the talk was like they're never going to reach their full potential until they can get those two guys in their rotation or lineup that are going to be your defensive guys, a wing and a center that are your great defensive guys. Last year you were rolling out Kyrie, Luka, Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleber, and Dwight Powell. And it's just like, what the hell is on the court, right? And now you're like, all right, who's your center? Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber again? Like, is that really what you want? Okay, we'll trade Rashawn Holmes. But the big thing is drafting Derek Lively. He has been phenomenal for them. He is going to be a defensive menace for years and years to come. And then you sign Grant Williams, who just apparently this year became the greatest three-point shooter in basketball history, I guess. He torched the Grizzlies, but still, I guess he's just torching every team right now. But the big thing is what made them so successful in that finals or that conference finals run a few years ago was the impact of Dorian Finney-Smith into that lineup. So where Luka wasn't having to guard anyone, right? You didn't have to force a rookie, Josh Green, to guard anyone or Tim Hardaway Jr. to guard anyone. Dodo took that responsibility every single time he stepped on that court. And then you also had Dwight Powell playing at a really solid level defensively, I guess, in the paint. Same with Kleber. He was playing exceptionally well, but now you've got a mainstay in Grant Williams and Derek Lively that are going to be foundation pieces of this defense. Now mix and match those lineups with the bench guys, Jaden Hardy, Tim Hardaway Jr., somebody else that they may trade for, Omax Prosper, one of their rookies, something like that. You can figure it out, and Dallas has really got a good situation on their hands. And if Luka's playing at the MVP level that he is right now, look out, because I saw that man take 3 step-back threes from half court damn near against the Grizzlies, fully contested, and just drained them. And it's like, how do you stop it? How do you stop it? So it's impressive. They can continue to find a way to play at this level and make these defensive strides that they are. They're going to be a very, very solid regular season team. Now, playoffs, different beast, because they can put Lively out in a 5-wide defense and it just doesn't work. That'll only be time to tell. I think he's athletic enough to be able to deal with it, but in the NBA, it's a different beast. So you wouldn't be able to know until it happens. But Dallas looking really solid to start the year. A couple other teams I want to mention real quick as we wrap up the NBA that have impressed me this year, or I guess not impressed me. I kind of knew that these jumps were going to happen from these teams, but I think to the general public, when you see the Indiana Pacers and the Orlando Magic, you think, whatever, who cares, right? But you look at these teams and you watch them, and it's like, man, these are some really good young cores that could be able to compete. Play-in spots are up for grabs in the East totally this year, especially with a lot of teams underperforming. Playoff spots, play-in spots are all up for grabs, and Indiana and Orlando right there trying to grab that brass ring to be able to kind of take that torch into the next level. Tyrese Halliburton is fantastic for Indiana. Ben Mathurin, fantastic. They signed Bruce Brown. A lot of people made fun of him for the $25 million they gave him per year, whatever, $20 million they gave him per year. He's been fantastic defensively, such an impact for them. And that's moved Buddy Hield to the bench. Still probably going to get traded, but he's been shooting the ball the most efficient he has his entire career this year coming off the bench. So that's interesting to note when you look at him being traded to another team. And then you look at the rest of the team, you're working with Miles Turner, Jalen Smith, Isaiah Jackson as your other rotation. TJ McConnell coming off the bench is also a very, very, very serviceable guy to have off the bench. He knows his role. He's going to give you hustle plays. He's going to be very smart with the basketball, less turnovers, more assists for him than anything. And then you've got plenty of other guys you can work with. Andrew Nemhard, Florida legend, obviously going to be able to do his thing off the bench. He's been really efficient for the team as well. So Indiana has really, really impressed me. I knew they were going to take a little bit of a leap. I didn't think they were going to be this good this early. But it also is a testament to Rick Carlisle, a fantastic coach who I think gets overhated for a lot of his stuff in Dallas. Got the blame put on him a lot there. I think him and Luka just didn't see eye to eye because Rick Carlisle has a different style of basketball that he wants to play than Luka ISO at the top of the key. He wants to get things moving, and he wants to implement good defense as well, and you just couldn't get that there in Dallas. So I'm excited for Rick Carlisle to really make that Indiana team a fun one overall. And then the Orlando Magic, Jamal Mosley is doing a fantastic job with them as well. A young head coach, former player. We all know the story about good former players being head coaches. They normally work out for a little bit. But I think right now Jamal Mosley is sticking with this team. It looks like the guys have bought in. Looks like they care about their coach, and that's the number one thing that matters the most. When you buy in and care about your coach, that is something that is invaluable compared to any stat you can put on the court. It's about buying in the locker room. Paolo Banchero, not off to the hottest of starts or the most sexy starts, but he's efficient and he's doing his role with the team. Franz Wagner, unbelievable for this team. Jalen Suggs, really starting to make that next step. There's a lot of defensive plays and hustle plays that you can find clips of where it's like, man, Jalen Suggs is really, really, really improving here quick. Cole Anthony coming off the bench is great. Markelle Fultz has been in and out with injury, same with Wendell Carter, but both have been fantastic in their role. Mo Wagner, Franz's brother, and Goga Batazzi, who have both filled in when Wendell's out, have been fantastic. Goga went toe-to-toe with Anthony Davis the other day and gave him the best business he possibly could, and it was very impressive to watch. And then other guys like Anthony Black being able to come in here, the rookie out of Arkansas, being thrown into the rotation unexpectedly and being ready to do it is very impressive as well. So I'm super excited about what Orlando is building there. They're going to be a play-in team to 100% watch for. And if they can catch a good stride, maybe make a deal by the deadline, they could potentially find their way into a true playoff spot. Because when you think about Orlando, you can see the pieces and you can see the assets. They are one move away from potentially getting that playoff jump, and I'm excited to see with that. But that's going to wrap it up here for the NBA. More games to happen this week. We'll talk about the rest of the NBA when we come back next week. All right, moving to college basketball. I promised you guys last week that I had a guest to come on and speak, and we will have that guest come on and speak. This is previously recorded before anything has happened this week, so take anything he says with a grain of salt before you know the results that have already happened. So I'm going to send it over to my special guest that I had on this week. This was recorded last week, so we'll send it over there for that. Now that college basketball is starting this upcoming week with a bunch of great games, we take it over to the college basketball analyst himself, my buddy Kyle, who's a big Duke guy. But I want to get some of his takes on college basketball as he is the college basketball guy. So, Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having me on. Just want to say really quick, you've done an amazing job with this podcast. Looking forward to listening to it every week. I hope everybody does the same.
Yeah, well, thanks for glazing me a lot there. But as I said, you're a big Duke guy. What is kind of your outlook here for this team this upcoming season?
You know, as a Duke fan, we get a lot of crap towards these, being a fan. I'm a true fan, been a fan since I was a kid, so I'm not these bandwagon guys, so I don't want y'all to think that. A lot to look forward to. This is the first year that Duke has had returning starters in a long time, returning, I think, 83% of their offense, so looking forward to that. Two-hip flip is what they're calling them. Kyle Filipowski is going to be really big this year.
Well, we all know that if there's one thing that Duke can do, it's recruit. They can recruit their ass off, and they were definitely able to do that this year. They got two of the top guards in the country, but they're also returning a couple of guys at guard as well. How do you kind of see that situation turning out for them, and what is your outlook on the guards coming up this season?
Like you said, having these players come back along with these freshmen that were recruited in, you've got Jared McCain, you got Jeremy Roach, who's a 4-year player and your captain. You got Tyrese Proctor, who at the end of the year last year shows what he can be, and if he can continue to grow that way, I believe he's going to be a first-round pick. So this is the first year that you don't really have that huge rim protector like a Mark Mitchell or Derek Lively, but you have the guard depth. And in my opinion, guard depth is what wins national championships in college basketball. So finding minutes for those guys, and it seems that they've been gelling well together. I think Jeremy Roach is going to take that Quinn Cook role off the bench, hit corner threes, playing off the ball because you got Tyrese Proctor. But, if Proctor gets in foul trouble, Roach can take over the ball. McCain can handle. You got other guards like Caleb Foster that I think that's my biggest sleeper is – everybody, McCain gets that for his TikTok, like he's well known. Caleb Foster is kind of your sleeper, in my opinion, in that whole group. And I think their biggest concern might be their bigs. You got Ryan Young, who's your older guy. He's a 6-year senior, slow, but he does his role. And Christian Reeves, another big guy, young, 3-star, but he could eventually show to do something, but I think the guard play is going to be enough where they're going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree there. I, for sure, right now, as doing a lot of film study, I like Tyrese Proctor a lot to maybe even go top 10 in this draft if he can really take that leap. And I really like what Downs is doing as well. But kind of expanding on the NCAA as a whole in college basketball, we've seen some crazy stuff over the years. We all know how crazy March Madness can be in these tournaments. Every single year, the rankings will come out at the beginning of the season, and there's going to be questions on who's ranked too high, who's ranked too low. Talk to me, who are some of the teams that you think are maybe a little overrated here going into this season, with coaching, maybe some transfer portal additions that you might think, aren't as impressive to you? Who do you think really are the more overrated teams so far in the early rankings?
In the early rankings, like you said, the way too early college rankings look like last year. I'm going to have to take a little dig. North Carolina was ranked number 1, didn't make the tournament. So, They just go based off of players returning, but you never know who's coming in, how they mesh with each other. So my biggest overrated team, if you look at the top 5 right now, is Marquette. And I hate to say that. I know they've got 2 guys that are probably going to be first-round draft picks, but I just feel like they're a little bit overrated. And honestly, I think another overrated team, and they don't play in a strong conference, but I look at Florida Atlantic. I know they had a great run in the tournament, but, they should have lost to Memphis. Memphis kind of let that one go. Players started fighting with each other. So they just made a great run, and I think that they take that into account. And I know they got everybody coming back. I get that. But I just think they had the right draw, and I think those are my 2 overrated teams that I'm not saying they're not going to make the tournament, but I don't think they'll make deep runs if they do.
Yeah, I agree. I can see that with the FAU standpoint. Kind of like a Loyola Chicago. Every single year you expect them to kind of be there because of that run, or these Northern Iowa, whatever those other random schools are that have these runs. You expect them to return the next year. But who are some of the teams then that right now in these rankings, whether you prove it through the rankings or not, are some of the underrated teams going into this season?
So looking at it, and I hate to say this as an underrated because who they are, but Kentucky, I know they're ranked 16th, but I feel that they're a top 10 team. So it's not completely underrated, but it's a little underrated. And I think my 2 teams, one, as much as it pains me to say it, for people that know who I am, I'm not a big Memphis fan, but I believe the Tigers are going to be an extremely strong team. Penny has worked the transfer portal, did it last year. I think a big question is right now, and when this comes out, we might not know. But DeAndre Williams, he'll be 45 years old. It'll be in his 18th year in college. But if they get his waiver passed through, I think they're a top 15 team easily. So I would say that one. And I'm not just saying this because I know you and you're a big fan of them, but I believe Florida is being slept on in the SEC. I know you've got the Arkansas, the Tennessees, the normal Kentucky. But I feel like Florida is being slept on. I believe, I saw a tweet today that said Golden has struck gold in the transfer portal. And if that is what they're showing in these early secret scrimmages holds true, I believe that they could be a big sleeper team. So those are more ones I have.
Yeah, and kind of about Kentucky, they got 2 guys that are top 15 in the draft ranking so far, Wagner and Lewis, 2 of the guys that are really impressive. And to kind of piggyback on that Memphis talk, you get Javon Quinterly, who is a 4-year starter at Villanova and Alabama. So he's had the SEC play, taking it to the American Conference. You can play against these FAUs and teams like that. Houston, well, they're now in the Big 12, but you get the idea of the teams that they're playing. But experience is key in college basketball, especially in these days. Obviously, we know the Mikey Williams situation. Everybody's aware of that, and the suspension, not even enrolling in classes, and the whole off-the-court issue there. And I like how you touched on Florida a little bit, as we're going to a little bit throughout this year, because they've got some really good transfer guys. But everybody knows that college basketball is all about March Madness, the tournament. And sure, we might be in November, but who are some of the guys that you could see, or some of the teams rather, that when it comes to April time frame, at the beginning of April, the first week, who are we seeing in that Final Four, in your opinion, right now from what we know so far?
It's hard to say this because we talked about early rankings, and I don't want to list teams that are in the top 5, but I believe these teams that are in the top 4 are extremely strong. You have Kansas 1, Duke 2, Purdue 3, Michigan State at 4. And I'm not saying this because I'm a Duke homer, but I do think Duke has a very good shot to be in the Final Four, kind of what I discussed earlier. I feel like guard play really wins championships, and if they can get hot and play well with each other, their guard depth is so good. I have Duke in my Final Four, and I honestly, Michigan State. Tom Izzo, you can't really go against him. He's the man of March Madness. He always has his team playing well, and now he has a lot of guys coming back. He really has that team going. So I think I have Duke and Michigan State, and I guarantee you they're probably going to play each other because I feel like they play each other all the time in the tournament. Purdue is hard. Purdue's returning everybody. They're returning the National Player of the Year. It's difficult to guard. They got bounced in the first round, but does that really happen again? I don't think so. So I have Purdue, I have Duke, I have Michigan State. Kansas is hard to keep out of there, but I've really been looking at this Arkansas team a lot lately, and I could see an Arkansas slip. Like if they get hot, Musselman's, they love them. I think if I played for him, I'd want to run through a wall. Like that man can motivate kids, and so I could see in Arkansas. So I kind of changed my mind when I thought about it. So I'm going Duke, Purdue, Michigan State, and Arkansas as my Final Four.
Yeah, I like those picks. Obviously, like we mentioned, it's early on. It's really hard to really tell right now, but you've got great coaches. That's the key with all of those schools you pick there in the Final Four. You're pretty much getting really good coaches and all of those experienced players, and that's just kind of the key of making these big, deep runs. We see every year everybody gets bounced out. I know, especially for Michigan State, Izzo getting bounced in the first round last year by Maryland, he's going to have a lot of revenge on his mind coming into this year, as well as Purdue, Duke, who got bounced out by Tennessee, and Arkansas. Arkansas, obviously, you mentioned it. Musselman is fantastic as a coach, but we appreciate you hopping on. We're going to bring you on a couple more times here throughout college basketball to give some insight whenever big things happen and whenever you want to be able to break down things. So I appreciate you coming on here for this episode.
Hey, thank you so much for having me again, and keep doing what you're doing. And I'm going to say one last thing. I forgot about Duke because I don't want to leave somebody out, but Mark Mitchell will be the key. When he got hurt and Tennessee went off that game, if he's there, I think it's a different story. So I think Mark Mitchell is going to be the key for Duke's success. He's a Justice Winslow, but a better scorer. But again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Look forward to joining you whenever you'll have me. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it. Really good as always to talk to him. He's a really good mind when it comes to college basketball. He really keeps up with a lot of things. He understands kind of the landscape of it. Being a big Duke guy, obviously, he's going to be a homer a lot of the times. He won't tell you that, but he is. But it's all fun of it, and it's exciting always to talk about college basketball with him. But it's really exciting when college basketball is off to the hot start that they are. And I know he just talked about Michigan State being a really, really solid team this year. But Michigan State just lost in overtime to James Madison the other day. And it was like, oh, my goodness, what do we have going on here? Michigan State played host to James Madison the other day, and the performance that they put on was lackluster, to say the least. They did get a very, very, very good performance out of Tyson Walker, their guard that's been there for, 4 years now. He had 35. But you look at the other players that are supposed to be impact players for your team. A.J. Hoggard, supposed to be one of your best players, 2 for 11. Jaden Atkins, 2 for 10. Malik Hall, 2 for 12. Like, you can't have that production from them every single time. And I think they'll be better. I don't think that you're going to get this bad of a performance really that much again, especially by a Tom Izzo-led team. But, man, what a shocker to opening night, I guess. Man, that was it was interesting to see that all kind of break down live in time as well. I kind of zoned out because I was like, Michigan State will come back and do it, and they just didn't. So congrats to JMU for really kind of putting it on there and taking advantage of the situation and the poor play by Michigan State. Like I said, I expect the Spartans to bounce back. Also on Monday night, USC was in action, and for me, as an NBA draft guy, I'm always keeping up with all these guys that are going to be draft eligible, who I think are going to be in the draft. I have a spreadsheet full of players and stats and everything to kind of keep track of who I like the most and who I want to watch going into each game. And for USC, they got a couple of guys that I'm really interested in watching, especially at the guard position. But the number one guy to always look at was the number one prospect in the nation, based on the website you look at, or at least the number one point guard, Isaiah Collier, who is unbelievable as a guard and played unbelievable on Monday night as well. 18 points, 6 assists, 7 for 9 shooting from the field, 1 for 3 from 3. Had 5 fouls and 6 turnovers, but that's naturally going to happen as a freshman playing in your first game. But still, the scoring level was right there. Other guys to look at, Boogie Ellis, the Memphis transfer, had 24, 8, and 5, looked really good as well. Another guy I like, Kobe Johnson for USC. Remember that name, Kobe Johnson, really starting to get a lot of his play last year, looking to take a little bit of a bigger step forward here this year. now, especially since Bronny James is not going to be playing for a little bit. He kind of grabbed that spot right there, 16-8 for him. I also don't hate what Joshua Morgan can bring to the team as a dual big man alongside DJ Rodman, the son of Dennis Rodman. So I liked what I saw from USC. They played really well as a group. Defense was off and on. You would see parts where they looked really solid and they would kind of collapse, but that's college basketball for you. Looking at the other side with Kansas State, some of the guys I like, Tyler Perry, I believe he's a North Texas transfer, grad senior. He played really well for them and shooting-wise at least. But other guys that they got, I don't hate David Nagesson. He's having to play a big role now at the big position because of the whole situation going on with Naquan Tomlin. That's a whole other thing that we don't have to get into because it's off the court stuff. But other guys, Cam Carter, another guy for this team who can make an impact. Arthur Kaluma, a transfer from Seton Hall, is an impact defensive forward. Shot 1 for 11. Just you're not going to get that many performances like that from him moving forward. And then Taj Manning only played 9 minutes, even though starting as a true freshman for this team. I expect to see a little bit better from him. I think they ended up going with Will McNair, a senior, that they can kind of trust a little bit more, transfer from Mississippi State to play a little bit more in that. But I liked what I saw from USC overall. The rest of the games, I got to watch a couple more. UConn got to make their debut. One of the top guys in this draft, Stephon Castle, making his debut for UConn. I like what I saw from him. Didn't really get to do too much, limited with some fouls and some turnovers. Kind of just sporadically playing him in and out. But when he was on the court, shot it efficiently, was everywhere defensively. There's a lot of people that are really comparing him to Marcus Smart, and I could see it. Like a Oklahoma State Marcus Smart, I could see it as Stephon Castle here right now. The other guy for UConn, Donovan Clingan, who is coming back off an injury, only played 15 minutes, but 12-8 in that time. He's a 7'2" center that's going to get you rebounds, put back, and is super quick and versatile, a little bit more quick than you'd think he is. Kind of looking at some other teams, I know Kyle in his preview mentioned Purdue a little bit. Zach Edey, the returning National Player of the Year, 16 and 11 for them. And then their two guards, Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith, both returning guys, 4 threes each for both of them in a big win over Samford. Big win meaning in point spread wise. Big win. Other games and other players to look at. Kentucky, they got 3 guys that played yesterday or 2 days ago that were really impactful, especially into this upcoming draft. One of the guys did not play, Aaron Bradshaw. I believe he's recovering from injury. We'll see him at some point soon. He's a big man. He's going to be another guy who's a top 20, 25 pick. But the guys who are going to be going in the top 10, for sure, DJ Wagner, a guard, and Justin Edwards, another guard forward hybrid guy. Edwards, 5 for 11, was impactful on the court on both ends with a couple steals. Same with Wagner, also impactful on both ends. A little bit more of scoring from Wagner than what you would get with Edwards. But Edwards brings you a little bit more versatility positionally. And then a guy coming off the bench that was really, really interesting because his name kind of gets lost a little bit back compared to Wagner and Edwards. But Rob Dillingham coming off the bench with 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, a couple of steals, no turnovers, 6 for 11 from the field. He looked really good. Kentucky, again, another team that Kyle just mentioned and talked about. But Kentucky, really, really interesting here early on, especially in this draft process for me. Kansas getting some wins. You're seeing what you get with Hunter Dickinson. Kevin McCullough looking really, really awesome. I'm excited to see kind of how that team unfolds. Marquette, a team that Kyle wasn't too high on, get to win over Northern Illinois. Obviously, you got a very experienced starting lineup led by Tyler Kolek. 14, 5, and 4 for him. Super efficient. Didn't play as much. But looking at the other guys, Cam Jones, shout out Memphis, doing his thing for Marquette, 20 points, 6 for 9 from the field, 3 for 5 from the 3-point line. Another guy who I like a little bit in this draft, another name to kind of sprinkle in there to look. Oso Ighodaro. I really like him. He brings a lot of size and versatility. He's a guy who's super tall, kind of filled out a little bit more, but super athletic, is able to go up and get a bunch of boards. He had 13 and 7. I like what he brought to it as well with 2 blocks. So Marquette, a team to watch for. They got an early test here coming up soon. Duke, as Kyle mentioned, is his team. They looked really solid. Kyle Filipkowski looked awesome, 10 for 12 with 25 points. Jared McCain making his debut, had 8 points. Tyrese Proctor, who I'm really high on, had 8 points and 8 assists. Jeremy Roach, we talked about kind of who's starting and who's coming off the bench a little bit. Jeremy Roach getting the start there. And then coming off the bench, Caleb Foster, a guy I really liked, I talked about there. 15 points, 6 for 10 from the field coming off the bench. I like him a lot. Duke getting a big win. And then looking at another team that Duke has a potential matchup with here pretty soon, Arizona. They looked good. Obviously, Caleb Love, everyone knows him from his UNC days. He's going to be super effective for this team. Omar Ballo at center is a big body as well. I like what Pelle Larson also brings to this Arizona team. Keyshawn Johnson, also really, really solid transfer from SDSU. Who else? I think Kylan Boswell, also really solid for them last year, now taking another step. There's just a bunch of guys for these teams that are just really, really solid. And then today, as I'm recording this, Creighton got to play. We got to see Creighton play a little bit. Obviously, in a dominant fashion, they don't have to play as many minutes. Trey Alexander, a name you need to pay attention for as well, to potentially be a sneaking up into the end of the first round type of guy. He went in the draft process last year, pulled out, went back to school. But I like what he can bring. He had 20, 4 and 5, shooting 7 for 8 from the field, 2 threes. Another guy, Stephen Ashworth, another name to look forward to in this college basketball landscape. Maybe the NBA will see based on how he progresses. But Stephen Ashworth, a transfer from, I believe, Utah State, 17 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 for 7 from 3. If you know anything about guys from Utah State, they shoot the cover off the ball. Last year he shot like 44% from 3, one of the highest in college basketball. And then shout out to my guy Francisco Farabello. Buddies, really good buddies with Desmond Bain. Got to work out with him over the summer as well. Kind of meet him and talk to him. Coming off the bench, he's been dealing with some injuries over the past couple of years, so shout out to my guy for doing his thing, coming off the bench 5, 4, and 2 in his 25 minutes that he was given. So that was cool to be able to see him play as well. But the big game of the night, we talked about it last week, Auburn and Baylor. Big expectations, high hopes for both teams coming this year. Janai Broome for Auburn, 16 and 11. Not shooting it the most efficient. Missed a couple of free throws, left him on the table. But Aiden Holloway, the true freshman coming off the bench, we all thought that he was going to be really solid for this team. 19 points, 6 assists, 6 for 15 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3. Really solid, but not enough to hold off Baylor, who, let's just sit here and talk about a guy for Baylor who is going to go top 10. No doubt in my mind. And his name is Jacoby Walter. He is unbelievable for Baylor. He looks so poised, so ready just in game 1. There's going to be some things you got to work on him with. Some of his shot technique, it's a little too direct, if that makes any sense. Doesn't look like an NBA shot. Kind of looks like what Kason Wallace was last year. I assume the evolution of his shot will change throughout the year and into the NBA. But maybe I don't know what I'm talking about in general, because he has 28 points, 6 rebounds, 7 for 13 from the field, 4 threes, 10 for 10 from the free throw line in 33 minutes that he played for Baylor, and able to get them the win. Ray J. Dennis, no, not Ray J from other things you might know him from. Definitely not involving music. Transferring over from Toledo, gave Baylor 15 in the starting lineup. Jalen Bridges, another guy for this Baylor team that could be impactful, gave you 13. And then coming off the bench, V's Missy, a true freshman, giving you 10. And then Langston Love. I don't really know much about Langston Love, but Langston Love also gave you 10 off the bench in quality minutes as well. So Baylor getting that win last night over Auburn in a really solid game. And we'll talk about Florida here as well, just because Florida's my team. I will always ride and die with the Florida Gators. So we're going to talk about it a little bit, just because I know there's not as many people that watch Florida compared to whatever else, other teams that are on. But Florida looked awesome. There were some spots where they went in droughts without scoring, but that's just kind of what you're going to get when you got two returning players to your rotation, or three, but the other one didn't even play last year. You're getting a whole new transfer rotation pretty much. But some of the highlights, man, Riley Kugel, we all know how great he's going to be. He's going to be a first-round pick in the NBA draft probably. He is unbelievable, had 23 points for this team. Here's a name you need to know, 100% a name you need to know. Walter Clayton Jr., transfer from where did he transfer from? It was Rick Pitino's last school. Iona, right? Iona, yep. Transferred in from Iona. Last year was one of the top three-point shooters in all of college basketball. Super efficient, shooting 43%. He came in, sure, if you look at the points and whatever, it's like, who cares, right? 9, 8, and 5. Who cares? He only hit 1 3. 3 steals and a block. If you look at the way he moves defensively and his ease of taking the ball up the court every single time, the smartness, he threw a couple of lobs, great down the court passes, like everything that you watch him, the game comes so smoothly to him. And for a guy who didn't even take basketball seriously until his senior year of high school, where he was going to be a Power 5 recruited running back or linebacker, I believe, and he decided, hey, I'm going to go and play basketball instead. He looked really, really good for Florida. He just looks like a pro already. That's a name you need to watch to potentially creep into the end of the first round this year in the draft, because there was a block that he had where he just easily glid into the air and pinned that shit off the backboard. It was insane. Other ones, Micah Handeglotten, transfer from Marshall, looked awesome, hitting a couple threes, which is huge to see. Tyrese Samuel coming over this year from Seton Hall as well. I said Kaluma earlier from Kansas State was from Seton Hall. I meant to say Creighton. I'm thinking of Tyrese Samuel on my mind. Tyrese looked awesome for this team as well. Will Richard didn't really get to do too much. But guys that impressed me off the bench, Alex Condon, a true freshman from the NBA Academy over in Australia. He looked really solid as a true freshman. I was really impressed with Denzel Aberdeen's minutes that he was given. Julian Rishwain, who was a transfer from San Francisco, was with Todd Golden over there. Really didn't get too many minutes to shine, only got 6, but I expect him to get a little bit more here in the future. And that's just what you get, and that's even without Zion Pullen, the big-time transfer for this team coming from Cal Riverside, being an 18-point-per-game scorer last year. He's going to make a massive impact, one of the top guys in the transfer portal. That's with him not even being in the lineup. Florida's got a big test this upcoming weekend, so we'll have to see what goes on there. But speaking of this upcoming weekend, we'll talk about the games in college basketball that are coming up, because I know a lot of you guys are realizing college basketball is back, and you may not know some of the really good teams or maybe what games are going on, what days. So I'm here to bring you the knowledge that you should be given on when each game are played. So today, as this comes out, FAU, the darling of the tournament last year, taking on the former tournament darlings in Loyola Chicago. That's going to be a good game. Troy in Ohio is also happening tonight. I think I said tomorrow. It's tonight when this comes out. Tomorrow as I'm recording for me. Troy in Ohio. Sure, not the sexiest game to look out for, but I like that matchup between the two teams. I think they're two of the group of 5 schools that could really make some noise. Arizona State and Mississippi State making their season debuts. I like what both of those teams can bring to the table. I really like some of the guys from Arizona State, especially Frankie Collins for this team, really getting in an enhanced role. And then Bryson Long from Houston Christian, a transfer over, kind of getting some minutes as well. Be interesting to see what he does alongside some other transfers like Adam Miller from LSU. And then for Mississippi State, you're returning a lot of guys like Deshaun Davis. He's going to be coming back. DJ Jeffries is returning as well. Jimmy Bell down the middle coming in from West Virginia. Should be interesting to see how they both work out. Thursday, another one of those group of 5 games that you just need to see. James Madison got the big win over Michigan State. Now they got to turn around and play Kent State, who last year Kent State down the stretch was one of the tougher group of 5 teams to play, especially in the MAC. So Thursday is a limited day of really good games. So watch out for that one if you want to get your college basketball taste in for Thursday night. Friday, a big slate for Friday. This is the one you want to pay attention to is Friday night. Virginia and Florida. This is Florida's big test. It's time to see what you can do, especially Reese Beekman for Virginia, locked down at the guard position. See how you can work around this incredibly slow-paced team and defense that's always efficient for some reason in Virginia. Another game, big game to look out for here. Arizona and Duke. Big game. We talked about both of those teams. It's going to be on ESPN2, I believe, at 6, 7 Eastern. But I think it's at Cameron Indoor. Yes, it is. So watch out for that one. That's a big game on Friday. Wake Forest and Georgia. Just another game of 2 good teams, or 2 decently okay teams to watch. Georgia not really that good, but it's an SEC school, so why not? Texas A&M, speaking of good SEC schools, Texas A&M going to be making their season debut on Friday. Hayden Hefner, their leading scorer from a year ago, as well as Henry Coleman being an impact for this team down low. It'd be interesting to see how they kind of work around things. Wade Taylor, obviously, also being another guy for this team who could be really, really solid. And then for Ohio State, we got to see them kind of play some exhibition action live on TV. But Bruce Thornton, a guy to really pay attention for. They played against Oakland. He had 17 in that game. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes for Ohio State's Roddy Gale, another guy to pay attention to as well. But it's going to be a great game no matter what. Is it at? It is in Columbus? It is in Columbus. So watch out for that one as well. And then Davidson and Maryland, just another game to pay attention to there. Just because 2 teams that are really solid. I like Maryland's team a little bit. Clemson, UAB, 2 really solid teams to look out for there. Memphis and Missouri, 2 really, really solid teams to look out for there as well. And then Tennessee and Wisconsin. Tennessee got a win against Tennessee Tech. Dalton Neck, who is a transfer from what school did he go to? Northern Colorado or something? He's supposed to be the guy for this Tennessee team. He played really well. Zakai Ziegler kind of making his return. Vescovi not really doing too much in game 1, but your 2 bigs and Toby Awaka and Jonas Adu kind of being your 2 guys in the middle to man up against this Wisconsin team, who Wisconsin I think they're making their season debut, or maybe not. I don't know. They're not. They played a game already against Arkansas State. Sorry. But in that game, Chucky Hepburn, their starting point guard, had 20 and 6. But if you look down at the forward and big man position, Tyler Wall from a year ago was super effective for this team. And Stephen Crowell, who's a big body, effective a year ago, didn't really do too much in the first game. Should be interesting. But I really like a guy, A.J. Storr, for this Wisconsin team. He had 15 in the opening game. But last year from St. John's transferring in here, shot 40% from 3. I like what he can bring to this Wisconsin team. Those are on Friday. Sunday, San Francisco, Boise State, 2 group of 5 teams that are really solid. Monday, Michigan, St. John's. St. John's, Rick Pitino, the head coach there now at St. John's. They got to win tonight as I'm recording this. Xavier, Purdue, 2 really good schools that are obviously going to have matchups in the future. And then on Tuesday, Wisconsin-Providence, Colgate and Syracuse. That's a sleeper game to watch. And then some really, really good games, Iowa and Creighton to watch out for, Illinois and Marquette, Kansas, Kentucky, and Duke and Michigan State. That's going to round out your week leading up to next podcast that I record next Wednesday in college basketball. Like I said, this is a very basketball-heavy episode. I love basketball. This is the best time of the year that basketball is starting up. I get to talk about it all the time. Great to have Kyle to come on here and talk. I said we were going to talk about baseball. We're going to hold this off for next episode, hoping that some free agents get signed. Football, I hate football right now, so it can kiss my ass. So we're gonna stop the episode here since we've been on here for a long time. Again, I appreciate Kyle for coming on and speaking. He'll come on a couple more times here during the college basketball season to kind of talk about the landscape and what he sees, what he likes. And we're gonna continue to cover some basketball here on this show. We'll get into baseball as well. Maybe some football here and there. Once we get to the playoffs and the bowl season, it'll matter more for me. But right now, with my teams not really being in the best prime position, it's not the forefront of my mind compared to basketball at the moment. But I appreciate you guys for listening as always. Make sure you share this with whoever you want to. If you want to learn about basketball, you want to help other people get informed about basketball, share this with whoever. I really appreciate you guys who do listen. If you're listening for the first time because you're discovering this, welcome in. We do talk about other sports, but basketball kind of takes over when it's so heavy to talk about right now, and I love it so much. So that's it from me. I will see you guys next week. I'm Alex McNeil, and you just got your Sports Digest.